What's up guys, Jag here with a video I've been wanting to get out for a while now, but now that I'm back from the holidays we can get right into it. And that is a fist weaving guide. I'm going to go over everything you need to know to set up your character and some rotations and tips to use in the arena. But before we get into it, I'm just going to share some of my thoughts on fist weaving versus a normal mistweaving build. I'll start by saying why you should fist weave. Honestly, the biggest reason is just because it's a fun play style. However, a lot of people think it is an inferior build to the normal build, but there are actually situations where fist weaving is better. I don't think it will see much play in 3v3 or solo shuffle, however, it can definitely work in twos, and I actually think it is better than the normal mistweaving build when you're playing against casters. If you're playing with another melee, you can just run down a caster with a bunch of interrupts and CC to put on a ton of pressure. The weakness of this build is the fact that you're in melee range, which makes you very easy to CC, and on top of that, it doesn't have smart healing. For those of you who don't know what smart healing is, basically it just means that you will always heal the lowest health target, but fist weaving will heal at random. This is why it really only works in twos where you have less targets to heal. However, the healing and even the damage is pretty insane and can be very strong in twos. So with all that said, let's get into it. First, I'm going to talk about the comps that you should play as a Fistweaver. You definitely want to pick up another melee so that you can just pressure someone down. I have had the most success with Demon Hunters and Assassination Rogues because they have a ton of pressure, and more importantly, they have a lot of CC to lock down target so that you can just stay on top of them and Fistweave. It also works very well with Fury Warrior just because they have so much damage and self-healing. Unfortunately, Arms is a little squishy for Fistweaving, but you can probably make it work if you want to. I try to avoid all pet classes since it adds another heal target. However, I make an exception for DKs because they are really good at slowing and gripping and CCing targets, give you a much easier time to Fistweave. Next up is the stat priority, and you actually have two different options, but it is completely different from the normal build, which is why you can see here that I'm pretty much in all honor gear. The build that I like to run is Haste versus Crit Mastery. I find that Haste is very consistent and helps a lot with the shorter globals and cooldowns on your melee abilities because there really isn't any downtime when you Fistweave, so it makes the playstyle feel much better. You will notice that there's no mastery in this build because we are relying entirely on dealing damage to heal, which does not get any benefit from your mastery. The other option you have is to prioritize crit, so you can get crit versus haste mastery. This will let you deal more damage and put on more pressure by fishing for those huge Rising Sun kick crits. This build can definitely have its fun moments, but I don't find it as consistent as the haste build. However, whichever one you choose will be strong and is definitely personal preference. Next up is the talents, and as always, there's a lot of room for variation, but this is what I've settled on and like the best. I will put the talents import in the description below for everyone to use, but I'm just going to go over the important parts of the build so you guys understand what's going on. On the left side, you definitely want to be taking Rising Sun Kick with Fast Feet. This is how you get those big Rising Sun Kick numbers for both damage and healing your allies and makes the build so strong. You also really want to have your kick so that against casters you can stay in the fight and stop damage or CC on your allies or yourself. And then you do also have your slow. This is really good for sticking to the target. However, you can actually talent out of this if your ally has a really good slow, like an Assassination Rogue or a DK. And if you do this, you can just put a point into Tiger Tail Sweep or maybe Eye of the Tiger for just a little bit more damage. Then I also really like Celerity over Chi Torpedo when you're Fistweaving, because when you're Fistweaving, you're kind of more like a Windwalker monk, so it's easier to stick to your target with a roll instead of your Chi Torpedo, because sometimes you overshoot your target and go too far. And then I like Close to Heart because I like to play with melee DPS and we're all stacked on top of each other. So this is just an 8% increase healing from all sources and a really strong passive. On the right side, The most important thing is definitely Ancient Teachings. This is the core of the build. It makes your damage heal your allies once you activate the buff. You can do that with Feline Stomp or Essence Font. However, I like to prioritize Feline Stomp because it costs a lot less mana, and when you stand in it, you get a pretty nice buff. Then you also have your Chi with your Gift of the Celestials to make it 1 minute instead of 3 minutes. This is just a really nice healing cooldown to have, put some reliable healing with your Enveloping Mist, and overall is just a nice freedom to have to stick to your target as well. There's also Secret Infusion and Invoker's Delight. This just increases the burst potential of your Rising Sun Kick when you activate your Thunder Focus Tea and your Chi, so you can put on a ton of pressure. Then, of course, you have Teachings of the Monastery. This increases the amount of blackout kicks you do for every Tiger Palm you casted before it. And it's just really nice for getting those resets on your Rising Sun Kick, because the whole goal of the build is to Rising Sun Kick as much as possible. If you decide to run the crit build over the haste build, I recommend dropping 2 of these talents, so maybe Spirit of the Crane, since mana is not too much of an issue, and Mist of Life maybe, and you can put it into Manatee and then Focus Thunder. This gives you a really nice burst window. Since you're stacking so much crit, you can do a lot of damage, and you can actually potentially solo someone by yourself by doing this. Then for the PvP talents, the only mandatory one is Alpha Tiger. This gives you a ton of haste so that the build just feels more fluid. And then this is the overall setup that I like to use. We've got Peaceweaver and Chrysalis just to reduce the cooldowns of our major abilities. However, I do sometimes drop Peaceweaver or Eminence against rogues because I think it's important to port their stuns a lot of the time. And I also like to take Grapple Weapon against warriors because this stops a lot of their damage. Next up is the rotation, and the rotation is surprisingly more complicated than a lot of people make it out to be. And the reason is because there are 4 different rotations you need to think of depending on the situation. There's a sustain rotation when you have Thunder Focus Tea, and then there are 2 different rotations to think about with Chi. Now I'm going to break it down for you to make it really easy to understand. Basically, for the sustain rotation, you want to make sure that you have your Ancient Teachings buff at all times. To do that, you either press Feline Stomp or Essence Font. Ideally, you want to use Feline Stomp because it costs a lot less mana, and it gives you some nice buffs while within the Feline Stomp, which I'll talk about later. But essentially, you just activate the Ancient Teachings buff, and then you Rising Sun Kick off cooldown, and then you just Blackout Kick, Tiger Palm, Blackout Kick, Tiger Palm, until you get your Rising Sun Kick back. So that's the first rotation. Then you kind of want to build in your Thunder Focus Tea. I like to use this ability when someone is around 50 to 60% health to make sure I get some solid healing out and keep them alive. You want to use this ability on Rising Sun Kick. So you basically just make sure the buff is up, then you Thunder Focus Tea, Rising Sun Kick, Tiger Palm, Rising Sun Kick, and then Blackout Kick. And then continue to Tiger Palm, Blackout Kick, until your Rising Sun Kick comes back, and go back to your sustain rotation. You don't want to Blackout Kick in between the short cooldown of Rising Sun Kick because you want to save it for the longer ones at a chance to reset it. Then there's Chi to think about. This is a really good healing cooldown, and you basically want to use it after you get CC'd. You don't want to use it before because then they'll just CC you and kite you and you don't get too much value out of it. So you want them to CC you, get on the DR, and then you can keep your uptime with Chi. And there's 2 different rotations to think about when you have it active. When you're inside your Feline Stomp, and then when you're outside of it. Basically with Chi, Every time you blackout kick, rising sun kick, or spinning crane kick, you gain a stack of this enveloping mist buff. And when you get 3 stacks, it's instant cast and it's free. So it's a really strong healing cooldown. However, when you're inside of your Feline Stomp, your Tiger Palm strikes twice, which gives you more teachings buffs for your blackout kick. So you hit more times. So basically, when you activate your Chi, if you're inside your Feline Stomp, all you have to do is Tiger Palm, Blackout Kick, Enveloping Mist. Tiger Palm, Blackout Kick, Enveloping Mist. And just do that over and over again until your cooldown expires. However, this is only possible because of the Feline Stomp. If you are outside of it, then Tiger Palm Blackout Kick won't be enough. So that's when you have to start weaving in your Rising Sun kicks or your Spinning Crane kicks to then get the Enveloping Mist buff. You should be able to get out at least 2 Enveloping Mists when you activate your Chi, one for you and one for your partner, making it a pretty solid cooldown. This is also why I like to play with classes with a lot of stuns, like an Assassination Rogue or a Demon Hunter, because they can just lock them down, then you can activate your Chi and get that guaranteed healing. So it is a little bit complicated, but once you play around with it a bit, you will get comfortable with it, and it will be much easier, and you don't have to think about it too much. So that's all for the video. I plan on getting some gameplay out there and show you guys some pointers later, but for now, I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you all in the next one.